So, um, yeah, last time we looked at the how to if you have multiple items, if you want to render them, if you have it in an array, you can actually use the map function, right, to map it to a component, right, for each item. Today we're going to learn about uh, one thing which is called conditional rendering. So conditional rendering is basically you render something based on certain condition, right? Imagine if you're building a game and uh, typically, games, when you start, you have a page, empty page says, start the game, right? So you have a start button. And if you click on it, the game starts. And then once you finish it, so as soon as you start, that button goes away, right? And then once you finish the game, and then you say, oh, go back to the main page, you would see the button, right? So you can use a certain condition. We can use a state in this case to see if the game is started or not, right? And we can render content based on that status. Okay, so let me start. Let me open the code sandbox. And share my screen. All right, do you guys see the Google, the code sandbox? I'm assuming you are. Okay, hopefully you are. Okay, so okay, you are. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do is let's start a new code sandbox, and we can just get rid of this text, and then this one as well. Okay, we're gonna define a state using use state. Remember when we started React, we explore the use state, and the syntax is we need to import use state from React. Okay, and then we need to define the state, like in terms of state, we want just a boolean, which means is it something true or false, right? So the syntax of use state is const. You always have this const, and you have a getter and a setter. So let's say the name of the variable, I want to say game on, right? Which means it's true if the game is on, right? Otherwise it's off. And then we have a setter. So we say set game on equal to, and then set state. Oh, sorry, the use state, my bad. Use state. And then we'll set as a false, right? Which means the game has not game hasn't started. Okay, so we define this use state, and then we set this. Okay, yeah, let's follow through with this one and make sure you write this. Okay. Are we done? Oh, sorry. Okay. So now what we want to do, we want to say, see, if you understand this, the state, right? State is a dynamic part. Anytime you change the state, it re-renders the page with the new state, right? So what we want to do, we want to say, if the game is not on, we want to show the button where user can click to set the game on, right? So inside here, we can have, we can say, and again, if anything dynamic, you want to use a curly brackets, right? And within that, you want to write. So you can say, if the game is on, end. So this is a new syntax. So let me explain this syntax. It checks the first condition, this game on. If this is true, then it would render the second one. Okay. So let's say if this is game on, then I want to render something. Let's say well, if the game is not on, my bad. And if not, I want to put this a not sign. So if the game is not on, then I want to render a button. Okay. Start game. Okay. This is the syntax basically. I don't know why this. Okay. I don't know why it does render it like this, but so let's understand this logic, right? If the game is not on, right, then you render this button. So if you see here, we see this button. That's because the game is not on. And I can actually, let's just use that flag here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a div. And inside, I am going to say the game is okay. Usually okay, I'm just gonna use this. I can convert this into a string so that it would show me whether it's a false or not, right? So right now the game is I should say if game on is false. Okay. So I can see it. What is the status of game on? Okay, so initially it's false. Any question on this one? Again, anything you want to render that is dynamic, you want to put it inside a curly bracket. Anything that you see not within the curly bracket is static. That doesn't change. Okay. So let's type this in. You should be able to see this after you finish it. Okay, and then what we want to do is when we click on this button, we want to say, turn the game on, right? So this button, when we click on it, it should set this game on to true, right? Let's just call this one. So what we want to do is on click event here equal to, again, it's a click event, right? Which means we have to build this event. So I'm going to call this event function play, right? Which means we are turning on the game. And inside, I'm just going to simply use the setter, set game on to true, right? And I can use this play here. All right. Battery is low. So now if I click on this one, what's going to happen? It says the game on is true, but the button disappears because the state is no longer true, right? It's no longer false, which means this condition doesn't get doesn't meet, so the button doesn't get rendered. So remember, it only renders this button if this first part is true, right? So if I put false here, what happens? False and make it negative, this becomes true, right? So this only gets rendered when this is false. But as soon as I make this true, then true negative is false, which means this is now false, which means this doesn't get rendered. Okay. If I want to render something when the game is true, I want to do another condition where I can say game on end. So this one would render whatever I put here would render when the game on is true, right? And I can say div, instead of div, let's use h1 tag, and then say playing game. All right. So they're mutually exclusive, which means when this is off, this will display. When this is on, this will display. So we're not using if-else statement. This is almost like if-else statement. If I click on here, it says playing game, right? And you can say that the game on is true, right? If I refresh it again, it's going to go back to its original state to be false. You can see the game on is false. I click on it, game on is true, and then now we are playing the game. Any questions? This is very important. A lot of times you want to render something based on certain condition. This will help you do that. Now, how do you stop playing the game? Any ideas? How do you stop playing the game? You need to turn it back turn it off, right? So right now I have this function called play. I need to have another function called stop stop play, right? Or we can say end game, whatever. And in this case, we can just take this and then make it false, right? But we haven't actually used this because we only use play here, right? So where do we use stop play? Any ideas? Where do we use this button? One thing we know that we need to use it where we want to, while we are playing the game, right? Which means that button cannot exist within this, right? Because we haven't started the game. So for that, we need to include it here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add another div around here. And then let me format this. And then I will add another button here. And I'm going to call it stop play. Right? So initially, it's a start game. I click on it, the game start. And then, well, I should say stop game, right? So initially, it's a start game. And this is playing game. And then if I click on it, it should stop the game, right? Which means I would need to do exactly the same thing here. I need to have on click event here equal to stop play. All right. So start play, stop play, start play, stop play. Okay, I'm just going to give you a few minutes to type this in. I'm going to charge my laptop meanwhile. All right, any questions? All right. So Yeah, two things we learned, right? One is this use of end, which is pretty useful, right? Which says if the left side is true, render the right side, right? And the second thing is if you want to do two things, which is mutually exclusive, which means something is true when you want to do something and something is false when you want to do something, then you want to use two different statements, right? You don't want to do if else statement here, right? It's almost like if else. Okay. Okay. Let's introduce another state here. How about we can actually, so this will be an exercise. And let's discuss how to approach this, right? And then we can code this. So what we want to do is initially you will have this game on is false, and you can start the game. But then there are two options from this point. Either I can completely stop the game. So when I click on stop the game, it will go back as it is, right? How it's working right now. But I have another option as well called pause the game. And when I pause the game, what happens is this would say paused game, right? And I can still stop the game while the game is paused, but I can also unpause the game, right? So once you press the pause button, the pause disappears, but then you will have another button called unpause or continue, whatever you want to call it, right? Any question on this one? So let's build this. How do we approach this, by the way? How do we approach this problem? Any ideas? Come on. Something.
It's not just the same, but with different sort of names. So you're saying that
Right. We have a
it's
game
still
is
game is on
stopped
true.
initially. If I want to start the game, I click on here. From here, I can stop it or pause it, right? And once I pause it, I can unpause it, or I can stop it altogether. So let me know you got the question, right? And this is your exercise. And then all it's gonna say is pausing the game. And when you unpause it, it goes back to playing the game. Okay. Any question before you start the exercise?
Can you post the
All
snippet
right.
again?
I'm gonna give you, let's say, 10 minutes to finish this. Again, if you have any questions, just type it in the chat. All right. Anyone with a solution? Let me ask a different question. Any blockers? Anything that kind of creating a problem for you? Any errors when you try to do that?
Hi, can you hear me all right? I'm not sure if everybody can hear me, but I was trying to add a new
Type
function
if you're
of.
still working on it. I'll give you a few more minutes if that's the case. Anyone still working on it?
I'm still working on it.
Oh, sorry. Do you say you're working on it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll give you a few more minutes. All right. Let's just take a few more minutes. We'll maybe 4:50 or so. All right. Anyone with a solution? Any issues? What do you think? What's your approach? Usually in the programming, no matter how how you think what the solution is, what are the first thing you do is you whatever the first thing comes out, it's called brute force approach, right? Which means you go and say, okay, I'm gonna use this, just try it out. First, jot it down what you're gonna do, right? Don't have things in your head and try to do this, right? You need to put it on a paper. So I'm gonna do this, unless you're very clear. Like I have so much experience in this space that I can do it without thinking. But if it's a new language or or new problem, I have to go and draw it out what the approach is going to be, right? So that's how I see it. Okay. If you're still working on it, I can give you a few more minutes. No problem. I want you to solve this problem by yourself, so you get a satisfaction. You can let me know in the chat. All right. Looks like good. Okay, so the solution is, first of all, let's just think about how it's going to work, right? We don't want to do anything when the game is off, right? So if the game is on is false, we don't want to make any changes, which means we don't want to make any change to this line, right? The only change we're going to make is to this section. Now, in this section, I mean, there are multiple approaches, but obviously we need to introduce another state, which is called if the game is paused or not, right? So we can introduce another state, because one state, right now we are using true or false, which means there's no third state. Okay, so here I'm going to use another state, game pause, or game paused set. Well, I just call pause. Set pause. Set game pause. Use state, then set it to false, which means it's not pause or not on pause, right? Okay, so if this is the case, then we need to make another change. First of all, we need to introduce another button here. And this button is, again, you can stop anytime. So which means I don't think we're going to make any change to this one. Okay. But I can say here, if game is paused, which is true, then I want to have another button, right? Call, unpause. Right? Oh, button. Right? Unpause. What's the issue here? If
You need your ampersands. You're missing your ampersands.
oh yeah, %, yeah. Thank you. I was like, oh, something is wrong here. Okay, so if it's paused, then we want to say unpause this, right? So initially it's not. So we want also another one. If it's not paused, then we want to say pause the game, right? If it's not the pause, then we can say pause the game, right? All right, so if I start this, I can start the game. Now it's playing game. I can stop it or I can pause it. Okay, but again, we haven't added the logic here, right? Which means it still says playing the game, right? So we need to add another logic here. So this will basically pause the game, right? And then this one would unpause the game. So let's write on click. Again, I'm doing the brute force approach. There are multiple ways to deal with it, right? So we can say function pause play. And we can optimize it later on. And then this, what it does, it just set to true. And then we can have another function, which is called unpause play. And this does completely opposite. Okay. All right. So for this one, we are trying to pause the game, which means we want to use pause play. And well, let's just make it lowercase. And then this is unpause play. This is called one click. We'll do unpause play, right? So start the game, pause the game, unpause the game. But this one still says playing game, right? So we want to change that as well. So we want to say if it's paused, then we want to say paused game, or if it otherwise say playing game, right? So we want to change here as well. So if it's pause play end, not pause play. Otherwise, paused, right? So many layers. So let's just start with it here, right? So you start the game. Now you have a game on. Hold on. Oh, if it's not paused, it's paused. Okay, why is it pause game, pause play, then game is paused. Not pause play. Okay, why is it? Okay, let's just start from beginning. I start the game. Okay, why the game is paused? It should be playing game, not paused. Because Okay, let's just put the status here so we can, similar to this, I'm just gonna put this here. So we will know what's going on. Pause play to string. Okay, so when I do this, oh. I know what's going on. It's not pause. It's the game.
Pause. Yeah.
My bad. My bad. I was like, why is it not working? Because this is the status. That's the other one is a function. So start the game. Oh, I changed it in the wrong place. All right, so start the game. Playing the game, I can pause it. I can unpause it, right? The only thing is, if I stop the game, then I want to reset because there is no pause, right? So if I stop the game, I also want to set the game pause to false, right? So what happens when I start the game, I can stop the game, start the game, pause the game. And while the game is paused, let's say if I quit it and come back, it should say playing the game, right? So once you start the game, it should not be paused. So I want to make sure that everything is covered. So this is a brute force approach, which means, yeah, I have lots of lines of code. I have functions for every single action, right? But I wanted it to show you so that, I mean, this can be reduced to, you know, one or two. But I wanted you to think about like the brute force approach for this, right? So whatever comes in your head first, you just code, and then you can say, okay, how do I improve it, right? So that's the idea. Any question? Let me put this code in the chat for everyone to see. Any questions? Okay. Yeah, this is actually, you're going to be doing a lot of these kind of a conditional rendering whenever you, you know, build any application. There has to be some conditional rendering, right? That's how the game, anything that you build dynamic that changes, right? You need to have you need to understand how the conditional rendering works. And it's actually pretty simple. As I said, you know, you just have a curly bracket and then you check the condition, and then based, if it's true, then it renders this, the following thing, right? Now, to improve this, right, you can actually get rid of all these from the all four, because if you look at this, right, pause play and unpause play, I don't need two functions to do that. I can do something like this function called set pause, set game pause or something, right? No, not this one, sorry. I can do pause play, and I can set the value, right? So whatever the value is, I'm going to set it. So I can do If it's true, then it's going to set true. If it's false, it's going to set false. Like I don't need to do pause and unpause. I just can pass the Boolean, and that would, change the game, right? Yeah. There are sometimes, like when you start the game and stop the game, you can just toggle the button. You don't really need to say, oh, this is start, or this is stop. You can say if it's start, make it stop. If it's stop, make it start, right? So it's called toggling, right? So you can do that as well. Yep. Any questions? Remember, we use this previous state. You can always use a previous state, right, to do that. And the previous state, what it does, instead of this set game on, you can do this. Let's show previous state. Yeah, you can use it like this, right? Right, so when you do the, let's say, set the game on, you can use a callback function. And here you'll get a previous state, and what you do is you can say if it's a, whatever the previous state is, you can do the reverse, right? Or opposite. So if it was false, makes it true. If it's true, makes it false. This is how, this is how, so you don't really need, you can just always call play, and it works that way, right? Somebody has a question? Yep, set the game on, yeah. All right. Yeah, I think that's all we want to cover today. Practice a lot, because I think this is a very important subject. Practice a lot. I would always say, just use this syntax rather than using this syntax, because it's much, especially with if you do, remember last time I explained, if you do multiple updates to the same state, using previous makes much more sense, because every time you do that, it updates, right? But if you just set something fixed like here without using previous, then multiple updates doesn't work very well. Okay. Also try to optimize this. How can you optimize this? What is the best way to deal with this? Because it's quite clunky, right? But as I said, it's a brute force approach, so it's fine. But there are ways to deal with this to make it much more simpler. Okay, another way to deal with it is instead of having a Boolean, you can set a state where you can have 3 states, right? So you can say, let's say, 1 means off, right? You can set another, say 2 means on, and 3 means pause. So this way, you don't have to use 2 separate states, game on and game pause, right? You just have a state called game status, and start with an off and on, and then pause. So you don't need to do all of these complex logic, because having multiple states always difficult to manage, right? Because you're using combination of on and pause. But instead, if you have a state which, you know, which is not Boolean, you can use this. Okay. Any last questions? All right. So yeah, this is I'll give you the homework based on this. Pretty much you need to convert your problem into using this logic where you have only one state called game status, and you can change it based on this logic. Any question on this one? Do you guys understand what I mean by that? Right. So instead of game on and game pause, we can have a one state called game status, which is initially off, which is 1, and then you can change on to off. And pause, yeah. All right.
When we submit the homework, do we submit the code in?
Yeah, you can always do either. You can just save in the code sandbox and send it to me, send me the link, or you can just copy paste the you know, code as a text. Either way, it's fine.
Okay, I'll send the link. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. All right. I'll see you guys next time. And Andy, I remember you wanted to meet. You have some questions on, I guess APIs.
No, that's not me.
Oh, that's not you. Okay. Okay. All right. Cool. Whoever asked the question can reach out to me, I guess.
Thank you.
All right. See you next week. Bye.
मैं पहली वीडियो अमीशा ने